Hello and welcome to Vikings Territory Breakdown. I'm Joe Oberle, senior writer at VikingsTerritory.com and Purple PTSD, and I'm with the lightning rod, Mark Craig from the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com, NFL insider and Vikings writer. Mark had a story this week in the Star Tribune that has caused a bit of fervor, and we're going to talk about that in the second segment. But first, we gotta get to the lead. The season's about to start. We're taping this on Thursday, and the season starts tonight. Chiefs are hosting the Ravens in the opener, and the Vikings go to New Jersey to play the Giants on Sunday at noon. And with Sam Darnold in tow, it's the beginning of the season with some question marks for the Purple, but because they don't have their rookie quarterback available. But Mark, on the precipice of the new season, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah. First of all, I certainly hope that Vikings Territory can monetize this interview and stuff, because Lord knows everyone else in the world has found has gotten their pound of money out of this one.
Yeah, Mark wrote a story about Mike Zimmer, and boy, everybody's talking about it. So yes, monetize this, right? Let's cash in. What did Mark have to say? Mark,
blinking lights.
We've got Mark right here. We got him.
Elephants run behind me or something. I don't know. Okay, I'll juggle. I got to teach me how to juggle.
There we go.
What my thoughts on the season, Joe? My thoughts on the season. And there's no way of proving this, so I'm gonna double, triple down on it. JJ McCarthy would have been starting. This would have been an excitement beyond belief. I'm sure Viking fans are still excited, but it is so hard to see this team doing well with Sam Darnold. I like the opener. I like the fact that they go to the Giants and they have Brian Flores against Daniel Jones as opposed to Ed Donatel against Daniel Jones. I wrote the story this week about last time we saw these two teams together, the quarterback on the other team was getting $40 million a year. And the defensive coordinator on the Vikings was getting fired, and the moves were not unrelated.
Right.
He got him paid. Flores comes in with a much different style, completely different style. But we haven't seen this team, like a lot of teams. We haven't seen Grenard and Van Ginkel and Harrison Smith coming back. We haven't seen the offense, some of the offense played 14 snaps in that first preseason game, but no Jefferson, no Aaron Jones, who's a huge key to this whole season. So looking forward, it's just hard for me to think that they're going to do anything with Sam Darnold. Now, that's not to say it can't be done. My predictions don't match up with, say, like Jeff Diamond, who said 9-8. And even though I don't agree with that, I'm like, I could see it. We just don't know. And that's why the NFL is so great to watch, because especially week one, as all of us survivor pool people know, week one is brutal to predict.
Yeah, you came out earlier in the week, I think, and said 6-10, right? I said 9-8 last week on this show, and you came out in the Star Tribune. Is that right with your prediction?
Well, I had them playing every game. I didn't have them not playing one of them, so I had 6-11.
6-11. Yeah,
I have them showing up for every game, Joe. They will show up for every game.
Well, like your prediction about McCarthy would have been starting, can't prove it. I think they would have won the Super Bowl had he started and been healthy all year.
That's right. There you go.
Can't prove it.
Yeah, it's a shame, because I really like where this guy was going. I love his I just had a really good feeling about him, as the Vikings obviously do. But nothing you can do about that now.
Well, let's get into some particulars, some news items with the Vikings. Then we'll talk about Zim in the second segment, and then in the third segment we'll have our prediction segment where Mark is going to talk about not only the Vikings and how they'll do on the Giants, but he'll talk about he's in the paper this morning with his Super Bowl winner. Now that we know that JJ isn't going to lead the Vikings there, so anyway. KOC had a presser this week, and he talked about a number of things. Were there some highlights there worth talking about, or is it just, the injury report, when we got the 2 receivers down, or what did you glean from that?
Joe, I was in the locker room talking to. I told a story on the 3 most important players that I see. Well, that was actually later, but I didn't go to O'Connell. But my 3 most important players: Garrett Bradbury, Blake Brandel, Ed Ingram. Where you can have your gritty, your quarterback, your running back, but to me, those are the 3 most important guys. What came out of it was there was a lot of discussion about how they're going to try and maximize the most that they can. Having McCarthy really go through the game planning, and O'Connell's going to work with him, just throughout the year, and that they don't want to waste this year. I appreciate that. He's got to say all that stuff. And it is good that, that he'll be around the team. He'll be in meetings and stuff, but it's going to be starting from scratch next year, or not extreme like a rookie coming out, but he's still essentially going to be a rookie next year. So there's a lot of that, as far as what they're going to get out of JJ, and then there was also the hope that Addison will, he's moving around well. Tuesday, I think he was limited in practice yesterday. He'll be listed as limited. I'm sure he'll be listed as questionable. But probably the news to come out would be Jalen Naylor, yet another.
Yeah.
He's limited in another way, and you hope that's not. It doesn't knock him out of this game, because that's the only thing that's standing between this guy and taking that next step, is that he just cannot stay healthy.
Yeah, that's too bad. Now they are a couple receivers down. I mean, all reports sound like Jordan Addison will be ready, but Naylor is a question mark. And they both got ankle injuries, and that was one of the biggest storylines in training camp this year and the preseason was Jalen Naylor, and to see him limping up to the gate to start is just a shame. It's just a shame. It's this snake bit team year after year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just you got to look at what this team does as opposed to what it says. So I know we'll talk about Jaron Hall, but what was said about Jaron Hall is, and they may feel that way, but the truth is they saw a chance to get someone better, and they took it.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That was one of the bigger surprises this week was Jaron Hall. He makes the 53, and as the week goes on, he's waived, and they pick up Brett Ripien, brought in as another quarterback, and they tried to bring Hall back on the practice squad, but he said, "See, you wouldn't want to be and went to Seattle's practice squad." So, I mean, why did they make that move? And something just kind of gave up on him. I know they wanted to give him back on their terms, but I don't know. I don't know that you can do that in today's NFL. It's a little
I mean, Brett Ripien. They view Brett Ripien as a guy he's played 10 games in the league. He's farther along, and then they consider him a better quarterback. That's what you don't really get is, hey, this was our chance. They did say he's more experienced. They feel better. This helps them feel better about their situation going into the season. Like if you had to play right now, would you want to go Brett Ripien, or would you want to go Jaron Hall? Clearly they like Brett better. And this is a coach that's been, he enjoyed a lot of, he and other people before him throughout Kirk Cousins' career enjoyed the fact that it didn't matter who the backup was. And suddenly it became, hey, not only does it matter who the backup is, we need to know who the third guy is, who the fourth guy is. So, I don't doubt that they tried to bring him back on the practice squad. But, as much as they want to say, this is the best situation for quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, he said, I'm going to Seattle. Now, I would guess, I don't think anyone's talked to him, but, he went to BYU. He's from Utah. He's from out there. So I'm sure family and everything trumped all this, being the fourth quarterback and essentially the fifth quarterback with JJ in tow as well. I think Seattle's a better situation for him out there.
Yeah, it is. He did had some moments this preseason, but he also had some bad moments, and it says, like you said, it's probably a response to what happened last year at the quarterback position for Kevin O'Connell. But is it also saying they definitely are trying to win now? If they listen to this podcast, I've been saying all year it's a transition year, but their jobs are on the line, so they always got to try and win, and they're more confident than you are with your 6-10 prediction.
Well, Joe, let's put it this way: if they get down to Brett Ripien or Jaron Hall, does it really matter?
No, it doesn't.
Jaron Hall got benched in that, was it New Year's Eve at Green Bay when he was 5 of 10 and couldn't do anything. He got benched in that game at halftime. I don't know if Brett Ripien does any better than that. But when you get down to that, it's short of throwing Joe Oberle and Mark Craig in there. You're not going to get much. You're in trouble if you get down to that. So
right.
I don't think this move really has anything to do with they want to win now as opposed to a transition, because this is the third quarterback you're talking about, and everybody's in trouble when you get to the third quarterback.
Yeah, ultimately though, if you're on the roster, you have to perform when called upon, or you won't be on the roster later.
And that's what they're saying, that this guy's, even though he's not, doesn't know, there was some overlap in some of the offenses that he's been in that's sort of familiar to what O'Connell does. So.
Well, if it's like everybody else that is in Minnesota then leaves, Jaron Hall's setting off on a Hall of Fame career. I mean, look at Ortiz from the Twins, who just couldn't get it done here, gone to Boston. He's the hero and brought him championships. So that's how we roll here in Minnesota. Anyway, how about Brian Flores? Did he speak this week? Did he have anything that caught your ears or anything, or did he not talk? So I can't even remember.
He talked for like 20 minutes. Yeah, he was and I like listening to Brian. He's very even keel. He's got this pace of talking that's hard to know when he's finished. So you're constantly feel like you're false starting and stepping on his answers. I don't think there's any news that came out of it, but asking him just about, did you look at, week one, like you have to look at what the Giants did last year, but you also have to look at what, someone else, like you're trying to figure out Daniel Jones from 2022 when, he was coming off the field at the end of the regular season in New York, and they were chanting MVP, to last year, whenever the 6 games that he did play, he was horrible. And then he tears an ACL and he's out. So it's like week one, how much film do you look at? Do you even go back and look at what Ed Donatel did those, 2 times? They played him twice within 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And you look at everything. I got the impression based on his answer that they didn't spend a lot of time looking at Ed's defense.
Just bring the house, throw the house at him.
But it's a lot different. And I was actually talking to Harrison Smith about the Zimmer story. But then he mentioned, I said something about how Kendricks looks out in Dallas, and I said the practice I was out there, I said Kendricks looks comfortable again. I don't know if that means he's going to have a good year or just he looks comfortable. I said, but then again, you guys in 2022, none of you look comfortable. Daniil didn't look comfortable. Harrison didn't look, and Harrison said he laughed. He goes, I was just watching film of that, this week, which would tell you that maybe Flores did actually watch that film. And he said, I didn't even recognize us. It just, wow. It was so, just sit back and react and not really, press the issue.
Yeah, that game, Kirk Cousins gets so much grief for that loss, that playoff loss to them, because he threw short of the sticks to Hawkinson on 4th down to end the game, when in fact what they allowed Daniel Jones to do in the Giants in that game was what really lost it for him.
Well, yeah, you wish Kirk would do something. That was always with Kirk. It was always that, he can do this, he can do it. He's done this, he's done it. But there were times where he couldn't step up and really carry a team, like quarterbacks making that kind of money tend to do. But yeah, Daniel Jones, ran for 80 yards on 17 carries. Daniel Jones threw for 300 yards. Wasn't pressured that much. Did whatever he wanted. And I remember walking out of there, and it was he was heading into like a contract year or whatever, and listening to some New York reporter, phoning in his take or whatever, and it was like, the Giants have got to give this guy, they've got to pay this man before they lose him. It's just like, I've heard that before, in past years, in different situations with the Vikings. But that defense, even somewhere Ed Donatel is probably wanting to defend himself because they did win 13 games and they did have a lot of takeaways in key moments. But overall, that defense was just not good enough. Did not take advantage of the home crowd that the Vikings have. It just really weird that year watching the guys that are not mobile, like Jared Goff, just standing there and not getting bothered. And Daniel Jones is mobile, but not even putting any kind of heat on a guy like that who's not really he's not a $160 million quarterback.
It's a case study for NFL GMs not to fall in love with a performance. Make sure you know the player before you dump that much money on him. Speaking of that season and GMs, Kwesi had a presser recently, probably right after we got off the air last week, and he brought up something from that season that I know was stuck out to you at the Vikings. He compared him coming to take over the Vikings to the 33-0 deficit they had at halftime to the Indianapolis Colts, and then they came back and win. What are your thoughts on that one, Mark?
Well, I like that Kwesi tried to answer it. I mean, I like that he just didn't, sort of move on, next question, or you may not agree with the answer, but he attempted to answer, kind of like, it's like, holy crap, your 22 draft is finally just, the top of it has finally been blown away. You traded Andrew Booth for, Dallas's failed draft pick. You finally had to pull the plug on Lewis Seen, although it's only 2 years. Can you explain, what you might have been thinking? And he was like, and he compared it. He said, he felt like that he was down. He said, I talked to Kevin O'Connell about, what it felt like to be down 33-0. Going, in other words, going into that draft, it was like he felt like he needed to plug every hole they had. So that's why he traded down, and kind of admitted that, maybe it's better to just sit there and take the best player and all that. So he did answer it, but the down 33-0. I think I tweeted, didn't he win 13 games with that? With being down 33-0, you won 13 games.
Yeah.
Of course, then the flood comes in now. He's talking about the salary cap and blah 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 and all this stuff. Well, if Kirk Cousins stays healthy, maybe they get in the playoffs. I think they do get in the playoffs of Kirk Cousins because they only need to win, 1 or 2 more games. So 33-0 sounds extreme to me, but I do appreciate him trying to answer that question and sort of, I guess, owning up to that draft. It's good. If he has another one like that, he won't be owning up to it because he won't be here.
Right. And speaking of that, I Mark or Mike should put a trailer down below that this is a transition year in quotes from me, because I'm going to say it again. And I'm, if the Vikings do end up with the record that you predict at 6-10 or 6-11, they will have a pretty decent draft pick. I'm going to go on the record right now that I think Kwesi will trade it to get more picks. He'll trade down, and it's probably the thing to do because they got their quarterback coming back. Now, there are some good players they could get early, but I think that's what they would do. Any thoughts on that? I know it's way not the right time to talk about this.
Have you been paying attention since then? I mean, they traded. There was a surge going up, to try and, this past year to get the quarterback. Now you can't hold that injury against him. I'm afraid that, because then you're talking about another. If I'm O'Connell, when you look at it's okay. Let's look at the Giants. This game in particular. Joe Schoen and Brian Dayball come in at the same GM and coach come in at the same time in New York. New York had been terrible for years. Dayball wins Coach of the Year. The Giants get in the playoffs and they beat the Vikings. Already those guys are on the hot seat, and those guys are basically on the hot seat. And Bill Belichick, like when you're at the grocery store and you don't want to back out of your parking spot, and there's some old guy, like us, sitting there with his blinker on, waiting for you to come out. That's Bill Belichick waiting for the Giants job or the Cowboys job, I think. So he's sitting there over your shoulder, like, okay, come on. It's going to be my turn. And that's probably how I see Belichick ending his career. As back with the Giants.
He's sitting in his car taping an Instagram post. Is what he's doing.
Yeah. So, So what was I talking about? As far as that where we are from 3 years ago to now. It's
you're saying it happens pretty quickly, right?
It happens. It happens real quickly. And my thing is, look what they learned from going down so far and missing so many players. Stuff that we were saying immediately. The untrained eye, the amateur, podcasters. He's like realizing now, and I don't know if it's because of if there's so much analytics and Ivy League brilliance going on in your head that you can't think, hey, we needed, back then I was saying you needed the tackle that went one spot later to Jordan Davis but by that point, Kyle Hamilton had fallen from a top 5 pick, in who knows how he falls, but when all the draftniks started their assembling the draft, he was like a top 10 guy. And then by then he fell into the teens. Well, the Vikings could have had him. I think that they learned a lesson from it. That's not to say, because each draft is different and there's different situations, different players. But I think for him to trade back just because he needs more picks would there'd be more thought and put into it than it probably was when he thought he was down 33-0.
Well, if Zimmer would have been his coach for that first draft, he would have done more than just walk out of the room, wouldn't he? for Crazy's first draft.
A lot of defensive players there. Yeah, Zim might have.
Anyway, that's my segue. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the big elephant in the room, which is Mark Craig's story in the Star Tribune. We got him here, folks, and he can tell us all about that trip down to Dallas to talk to Mike Zimmer and company and the scorched earth that resulted. So come on back to Vikings Territory Breakdown. Okay, folks, welcome back to Vikings Territory. You've all been anticipating this. This is the question that we really need to ask, and you've all been waiting for. Who is going to return kicks for the Vikings? Just kidding. I do want to know that, Mark. I know you talked to the guys involved. I saw that on Twitter. So answer that one first.
Well, the special teams coordinator didn't get the memo from the NFL. Like when he was asked a direct question, he gave a direct answer. It was very strange because the Kwesi and O'Connell both said, Miles Gaskin, but we're working some other people in. And of course, he did. Matt Daniels did speak a little bit later, but he said, Ty Chandler, and which makes sense. Ty, and he explained that Ty Chandler being more of a sturdy running back because there's going to be a lot more. As you noticed, like in preseason, it's done for player safety, but I don't know if it's done for the returners' safety because the returners have been getting blown up.
Wow.
So you got to be a little bit more sturdy, to get through that initial wave. But yeah, Ty Chandler and then Brandon Powell is either, if they put 2 back, Brandon Powell, he said, would be the other one. So they've been working him there too.
Well, regardless how it works out, we're gonna. I think they'll have achieved their goal, which was to get people to watch it. If people are getting blown up and it's this new weird rules, people are gonna sit and watch it rather than go to the bathroom.
It feels good to know as an old school guy and an old guy that I love it. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's great that what they, because I just assumed that they'd find a way to eliminate the kickoff. And this keeps the kickoff in the game. It makes people watch. Could be exciting. Now, what could ruin the whole thing is if there are a bunch of injuries, that they, have to like adjust.
Right. They'll tweak it
They
again.
can't take any negative, like thoughts on anything. So it's like, hopefully it'll eliminate keep the concussions low. You are not going to, legislate the concussions out of football forever. Like that day will not come, but you can control it, I guess.
Well, I don't know how to transition to this.
Yeah, you need another You had a perfect transition to Zimmer. Hey, speaking of concussions.
Yes, that's true. Mark wrote a piece on Mike Zimmer this week, and I just, having been with you one time when Zimmer all of a sudden texted you and wanted to talk to you, I knew that you had a good relationship when he was here and you covered him, and he was he had not said anything since he left here with Rick Spielman a few years ago, and the new regime came in. He was fired, and it doesn't sound like, after reading the piece, that his feelings have softened since he left. But it's quite a piece. It's got a lot in it. Mike also talks about his son who passed away, which is tragic. But what got more of the headlines and everybody and their brother to pick up and talk about this week was what Zim had to say about the Vikings and the fact that he hasn't even watched a game since. So, Mark, talk about that piece, how it came about, and what your thoughts about what the wake it's left behind so far.
Well, yeah, I will. I'll kick it off by saying, it's the nature of the business today. There's a cottage industry of aggregators, re-reporters, people with their own podcasts. Like, it's out there that it's behind a paywall for the Star Tribune. This is proof of what the Star Tribune, with all of our resources, we can do. We've added a fourth person on the Vikings that's going to be coming to work for us here pretty soon. We still have a call. We still have the money to to do these things and produce this stuff. And you've got to pay for this content. I mean, that's how it should be in the world. You pay for content. And I will say that there's nothing we can do about the fact that within, it ran in Sunday's paper, but it posted at 8:00 on Saturday morning. By noon on Saturday, you already got everyone, come to my site, come to my YouTube cast, my this to my that, and let me basically read Mark Craig's story to you and then give my reaction to it. I will say that while you can't do anything about that, I would say that if you come to the Star Tribune and you pay for content, you're going to get great content. You're going to get the best content in town, and you are going to get also you're going to get more of what was in that story. I was doing a radio show on WCCO, and the last question was, Mark, did you get any impression when you talked with Zimmer that he's happy? Is there anything he's happy about Zimmer? I said, frankly, I led my story with it. I ended my story with it. The Viking stuff was him answering honestly. Some of the stuff I already knew about, but he didn't want to go with it over the past 2 years. I get the impression this is a man that has taken pot shots for 2 years and decided, in typical vintage Zimmer fashion, I'm going to put the target back on you guys and firebomb the place. Now, obviously, that's gotten all the attention. That's everyone's talking about what he said about Kellen Mond, including Kellen Mond, Chris Boyd, including Chris Boyd.
Stephon Diggs said he wouldn't. Came out to say, I'm not going to say stuff that went on back there. Basically, with his cryptic way to say stuff went on back there.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not even aware of all that. I've just seen snippets. People include you on, they whatever they call it, whenever they tweet about it, and they'll put your handle in there, and so I see that stuff. But
what was your sense, Mark, when you talked to him? Was he just waiting for this opportunity and he was pissed off? He wanted to get it out. Is he in a better place that allows him to look back and say, hey guys, this is how I felt. Now or is he? Do you feel like he's still he's still carrying the grudges that he says he he continues to carry.
Oh yeah, even he said he joked, he kind of laughed and said that's, I unfortunately I hold grudges. That's who I am. But another part of the story is why he came back to the NFL. He thought he was a terrible coach because he got fired. He thought he was, talking about Spielman, the relationship with Spielman. He at one point, which you're not going to find out with everyone else that's cherry picking the story, is he says, I'm not saying it was all his fault, the relationship between him and Spielman. I'm not saying it was all his fault because I'm sure I did a lot of things wrong. You're not going to hear that anywhere else. You're not going to hear, Mike McCarthy saying, I love Zim's style. I think today's generation needs more of that direct, no fluff, no BS. We had to take BS out. That approach. You see Eric Kendricks, who is the guy that, other than Terrence Newman, hurt Zimmer the most with what he said about how that thing ended, is, I could have gone to San Francisco. I wanted to come here and be the Mike linebacker. I wanted to play in Zimmer's defense. He tells me, I asked him, were you mad at Zimmer? He's like, Zim and I have talked. We had to talk before I came back. And he said, both of us, everyone's, it was a lot, the pressure at that time, because they were losing, they had lost for 2 years in a row. Their defense, was destroyed by injuries. People forget that, destroyed by injuries. And he said, both sides said things they didn't mean. And he said, I'm all about second chances. That's why I'm here. You're not going to hear any of this stuff that was in the story, but it's not out there.
You're right. The stuff that has, you made a point that where Zimmer does admit, I made some mistakes. The people that are reaggregating and talking about it are blowing up something else and saying he doesn't admit, he's blaming everybody else except him. He does blame other people. He takes a little culpability there. I'm not sure it's enough though.
Well, no, and it's him answering honestly about how he honestly feels. It's not the spin. It's not the, like I said, the pot shots that he's been taking over the years is from a lot of people saying things. And I like Rick Spielman as much as I like Zim. But Rick Spielman has come out and say, we needed basically needed a coach that could handle a quarterback, and maybe there's some truth to that, And it's answering how you feel. How did you feel when they fired you? And they, did you address the team? Hell no, I didn't address the team. They got me fired.
That's honest, boy.
That's Zimmer at his knee jerk, honest, raw best.
Yes. What fascinated me.
Yeah.
I was gonna say what fascinated me was to learn the back and forth between him and Spielman, how that process works. You always think when there was all these defensive players going earlier in the draft, you always said, "Oh, Zimmer's doing all that." But when it came to drafting a quarterback and Kellen Mond or whatever, Spielman was dead set on doing it, despite how Zim felt about it. I always assume that the GM and the head coach are right there with each other in a very good system. Well, I didn't get that feeling.
They start out that way. They all start out that way. They all start out selling that. But unless you win the Super Bowl and they retire, it never ends that way. It always ends ugly. I think, and I've talked to Spielman about this over the years. It's like you had to know that. With Mike's personality, if you didn't win the Super Bowl and both retire, it was going to end it's going to be a train wreck. And because Zim had never been fired before. Zimmer, at the end was probably not sleeping. It was driving him crazy. He was trying to find a way. Zim, the one thing that Zimmer admits in his piece that you don't hear a lot of people being reaggregating is that he overstepped his bounds. He even his bounds. With that one meeting where he got on him and said, "Hey, I'm going to address the elephant in the room, fellas. They're coming after me, and if they're coming after me, I want you to play." And then he listed all the things that had gone wrong over the years. From game 2 of his regime, Adrian, they destroy the Rams in St. Louis, and 5 days later he loses, Adrian Peterson, the Hall of Famer, for an indictment in Houston for the year. Things like that, and he just kind of rattled them off. He said, that he went too far with that stuff, and there's some people that want him to, to say all the things that, that you want to hear, that we can all put in a nice little box, tie the bow, put him aside and say, oh, thank you. That's not Zim. Zim's gonna be Zim. And I was, I think I can mention, I was talking to Harrison Smith, who, liked Zim and admits that, as Zim does, it was different at the very end. And this was after the story ran and, the locker room was kind of buzzing about it. And I was talking to him, and he said, I feel bad for the guys who came in last year because they didn't get the real Zim. Even though he was, a crotchety, guy pretty much throughout, he said, that's what made him love him. It was like kind of like this back and forth. And another thing in the piece that you don't hear is how he's got some of that going with the Cowboys now. He said it feels like a family. Talking to Al Harris, his defensive backs coach, saying, how that, and it seems genuine about how his approach with the players. They love it. They love the fact that it's a no BS. There's no none of that stuff, and that he can help them be better. And he's also, Zim said his legacy, and I believe it was in the piece, because my legacy now is helping these young assistant coaches become head coaches. Because he said, I'm not going to get a head coaching job again. I still think that could be that he could be a head coach by mid-season in Dallas, because Mike McCarthy's on the hottest seat in the NFL. But a lot in there's a lot of pieces in there. It's Zimmer coming out and being, completely honest, and it's so shocking. And this was extreme, but you just don't hear this kind of honesty in the NFL. Anywhere anymore. Really, it's all how do we sugarcoat this pile of manure?
Did you get any sense in talking with McCarthy and or him? I don't think you talked to them both at the same time, but did any of it come up where here's two guys that were at loggerheads for years in the NFC North, and now they're together coaching on the same staff? Did that come up at all? As that wasn't?
Yeah, there's a lot, and again, this is one of the longest stories I've written at the Star Tribune. I think I did a Jay Robinson piece once that was like 105 inches, and this was like 80 inches, and so you probably could have written 3 more of them. Like this, there's so much that you're trying to piece together. But yeah, they were on committees together. They were on the Madden committee or something. Always had a great respect for each other. Certain little snippets that you'd love to get in, because one of Zimmer's highlights, Zimmer's two highlights, I mentioned this in the story, is that going to Green Bay at the end of 2015 and winning the division. Teddy completes 10 passes in that game. Zimmer loved Teddy.
Yeah.
Teddy completed 10 passes for 99 yards and was as happy as anybody on the team. And I asked McCarthy about that game, and this isn't in the story. And he goes, at first he joked, he goes, I don't remember anything about that game. I guess we lost, meaning the Packers. I said, yeah, you lost the division. He goes, I didn't remember anything. He goes, no, wait, I do remember one thing. He goes, I remember telling someone to play Christmas music, because might have been a Christmas Eve game or around Christmas time. I remember someone saying, turn up the Christmas music because I don't want to hear the Skol chants in Lambeau. And the other one was, having the number 1 defense in scoring and yards in 2017, getting to the NFC Championship game with Case Keenum. Who was not a very expensive quarterback. And not that I through the research and putting the story together, I didn't sit there and take everything that Zim said and just as
right
gospel. There was some research that had to be done, that people weren't in the story. Zimmer was, you don't make the Cousins signing without your head coach being on board. It's he did not, he wasn't standing on any tables pounding. They never really got along, but that was a organization standpoint decision that was made. And,
well, for me, the quarterback scene with Zim was really strange, and I think I still hold that against him a little bit, where he never took meetings with Cousins until late in the regime, and he didn't even speak to Kellen Mond. I mean, I'm sorry, you're still the head coach, but he never had a conversation with him. I know you didn't want to draft him, Zim. I get that, but that just sounds, that sounds immature a little bit. And I'm not saying Zimmer's immature. I think sometimes his emotions get so caught up in something that he couldn't get past it to the personal level, where to do his job, which is to connect with this players in his most important position in the team.
Well, in his defense, he's coaching for his job, and Kellen Mond was never going to be of any value that year. I mean, Kellen Mond was, even to the untrained eyes watching him in training camp, the man was 2 steps behind on everything.
Yes.
People that, I'm not saying I don't know anything, because I've been watching this for over 30 years, but, you just got a sense. It's like, the same things that you see in J.J. McCarthy. Now, granted, J.J. McCarthy is a first-round pick, number 10 overall. Kellen Mond's a third-rounder. But, like the sense with J.J. was like, wow, this guy's got it. Not only is it a great arm, but it's just he's got the whole thing. Kellen Mond, he just never saw that. And, Kellen gets caught up in the machine of this whole thing. But there's just a lot there. And I really encourage you, if people could go and just read the story,
right,
the entire story, as opposed to what someone's selling on their site and someone who's reading it. And there's some of that even in our paper to that, of what, here's my take on what he said. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. That Jim Suhan wrote a piece about, it led with it since then. But, I was listening to Paul Allen talk about it. Paul Allen made an appearance in your piece, and I don't think he's entirely happy about that retelling of the scene, the story where he apparently, the whole incident where Kirk Cousins, throws a touchdown pass and comes over to the sidelines and grabs Zimmer by the scruff of his shirt and says, you like that. And Zim pushes him back or something. And it's all caught on camera, and it talked about for several weeks in there. And Paul Allen apparently said on the air, I believe, that Zimmer snapped or something. And when someone played that for Zimmer, he got mad, and those two guys owned a horse together, and Zimmer bought him out after that because he was upset. And I think that upset Paul Allen having all that come out. But
well, no, I mean, I think what and I'll say this up front. I did not listen to what Paul Allen said. I haven't listened to what some of the other people have said. Just life's too short for me to go around thinking, worried about what Paul Allen said but in saying that, in hindsight, and maybe it should have been foresight, I should have talked to Paul and said, hey, this is what he said. And then, but my impression of, it was Mike Zimmer saying why Mike Zimmer was upset with Paul Allen.
Right.
Didn't require Paul Allen to say, no, that's not why he was upset with me. It's Mike Zimmer talking about Mike Zimmer's feelings about Paul Allen. Now, what has since been relayed to me was that it was something else that this is again, I don't know if it's true, but I'm still going to go with what Mike Zimmer said, what pissed off Mike Zimmer, not what so-and-so told me that Paul Allen told him that Ben Lieber said this and blah, blah, blah. Apparently it was something that Ben Lieber said about Mike Zimmer. And, Mike thought it was Paul Allen saying it. Some people are trying to tell Mike that it wasn't. It was Ben Lieber, and Paul Allen just repeated it and all this. So you're chasing yourself around. The reason I included it, and I almost pulled it out because, Paul Allen's certainly a bigger fish than I am, so I'm a guppy. But for whenever I'm talking about Terrence Newman and Eric Kendricks and even Chris Boyd, and the things that Zimmer was touching Zimmer off, setting him off, Paul Allen probably wasn't big enough to put in there. But his quote about the grudges was directly about the Paul Allen part, which I wanted to keep in. I didn't want that to be connected to Terrence Newman the thing with Terrence Newman was sort of, I won't say heartbreaking. It doesn't elevate to heartbreaking, but it was disappointing. Like, because he loved Terrence Newman, and he says it in the piece.
Yep.
Terrence was like a son to me, and I called him up. And I called Parcells to talk about it, and because Terrence Newman is one that went on Tyler Dunn's great. Tyler Dunn does a fantastic job with long form journalism, and he almost worked at the Star Tribune, and he had Terrence Newman saying it was just a toxic toxic workplace at that point.
Right.
And he's probably right.
Right.
Zimmer didn't want to hear it. And so Zimmer called him up and said, well, and Terrence Newman, to his credit, said, that's just how I feel. That's how I felt. And he said, well, then we're done. So that was kind of this, like, you're done, we're done, we're done.
And that's where I part ways with Zim just a little bit, because, adults should be able to freaking go through it that and figure that out.
But also there's a part of this world now that wants, like, I want Joe Oberle to act a certain way. If Joe Oberle doesn't act a certain way, I'm not saying I'm defending, been saying how I feel. It makes Zimmer look bad, I guess. But I'm just saying, like, Zimmer's entitled to his opinion. He's entitled to what pisses him off.
And his feelings.
And we could all move on. You know what I'm saying? And Zimmer, the part of the story was about Mike Zimmer going through this 2 years ago, and how he has moved to this point, and he's happy in Dallas. And people take that as him talking about what happened 2 years ago, as if it's like just something he has in his life. It's being brought up because someone is sitting in front of him asking questions. And granted, he isn't watching Vikings games. He doesn't, and this wasn't in the story, but he doesn't like the fact that every other interview is about how the Vikings culture is the best in the history of the world. That is stuff that, is a direct, slap in his face. Now, the difference, to me, there's like two ways of looking at Mike Zimmer's regime here. There is 2015 to 2019, and then there's 20 and 21. And from especially 21 was, unfortunately, as someone who considers Mike Zimmer a friend, is what I thought how it would end with Mike Zimmer if it did end, because there's no account for the fact that Daniil Hunter, had neck surgery and missed all of 2020, and then he missed half of 2021, or that Everson Griffin was in a hotel, came back and was playing really well, and then had the mental issues, and or that they go to New Orleans and they're down to like their eighth linebacker. Garrett Kendricks was the last one that gave out. Week 2, Anthony Barr goes out, and all that stuff. So basically it's and eventually Kevin O'Connell will find that out. Kevin O'Connell, if he has a horrible year this year, isn't going to get a whole lot of extra leash by the fact that J.J. McCarthy wasn't here, whatever. Right.
It's part of the game.
And so,
like it was for Zim.
The talk's going to start on him. And now, granted, Kevin O'Connell's never going to end up as Mike Zimmer, totally different personalities. But there's going to be at the time whenever he's going to be on the gun, and it's going to be, someone else is going to come in and say, hey, probably the way the NFL works, it's going to be the flip flop. We're going to come in and say, we need more discipline. Our culture is disciplined. It was too lax before, blah, 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 stuff like that, So this is just the NFL. It's the never ending circle. And what disappoints me is the fact that the story is also about this man moving on and him saying, why are you back in coaching? Because people told me I didn't feel like I needed to prove anything, but I feel like I needed to prove something after what happened in Minnesota.
Yeah.
There's probably some other things in there that I regret for not putting in, that he did take some owners, some I just didn't get it done, stuff like that. So there is more to this story than what is just being, the clickbait.
Right.
Everybody's clickbait in the country. I had someone tweet me that was in Europe that said, I want to buy your paper, but my wife wouldn't why would I be buying an American, United States newspaper when I live in London or wherever? It's like, I just, when I go to the store, I'd like to buy a new car, and when I go there and I say, you know what, I don't want to pay for this car. Can't you just give it to me for a couple of years?
Right. Well, for my money, it was Zim. I liked Zim a lot. I mean, he was the coach the majority of the years that I was down there covering him, and for me, it's like passion and honesty, and that's what you got with him, and I love that. It's also a tightrope to walk. If you're gonna coach with your emotions and coach with your passion, and you're gonna be honest about it. As a reporter, I loved it. As a fan, I loved it. But boy, oh boy, sometimes you can go over the edge one way or the other, and it's not going to be without problems, I guess.
Well, so my thing, and I'm going to talk to Zimmer here. So I'm hoping that Zimmer read the whole thing. I'm hoping that Zimmer's not impacted. I haven't seen where he said anything, but I'm hoping that he read the whole thing and he doesn't feel like I came out of the weeds on him, because he and I have talked about this for 2 years.
Yeah.
As everybody was talking about it. Like, Mike, would you like to let me know when you want to talk? I always joke with him. I said, let's, write a book together. You can write your book. And he was like, oh, there's nothing good can become of any of this. So when I said I was coming down there, we met. We almost went to dinner, but we just decided to stay in his little office area. Talked for probably an hour there, sometime on the field. And he knew what was being discussed. And he knew there was more stuff that probably could have been even more inflammatory. But I want to make sure that I'm hoping that he doesn't just see what people are using to beat him over the head with.
Yeah.
And they
hard to ignore it.
Sees the full story. Because I guess I'm comfortable. So, I got back to my hotel room and he texted me and said, "Hey, great talking to you. I think you got me to talk a little too much." LOL. And then he said, "Well, I'm glad I got to talk to you." So I feel like he's been wanting to get this off his chest, and boy, did he ever. Yeah. So.
Well, it's a great piece, folks. If you haven't seen it, and something tells me having this discussion with you here, Mark, that we may not have heard the end of Mike Zimmer in Minnesota. And if he's ever coming back here for a game in the near future, that would be something to chronicle as well.
Well, tell Mike Walden back there, "Hey, Mike, let's monetize this one."
There you go, just like everybody else. Okay, well, we'll take a quick break. We got to preview quickly the Vikings game, because there is a season coming up here, a game on Sunday. So we'll do that, and we'll be right back on Vikings Territory Breakdown. All right, folks, welcome back to Vikings Territory Breakdown. Mark just cut open a vein in the last segment, so now he's got to cut open another one and tell us why. I mean, he predicted in the paper, oh my God, that the Vikings are going to go 6-11. I got them going at 6-10 is what I wrote down. I better change that to 11. And I say 9-8. I want to know, Mark, which games are they going to win, for crying out loud? Vikings have a tough schedule. It's going to be a tough season. But as a result, I think this first game's a must-win for them against the team. I really do. And I hate that term, must win, but I even put it in my headline. I'm saying it. I said it. If they lose this one, they could do a run of about go 0-7.
I remember 2000. What year did they open in Cincinnati with the Bengals? That 19 or no?
Yeah,
no, maybe that was 20. No, because it wasn't a COVID.
Anyway, what about it?
And the point being, it was back then the Bengals were considered horrible, and it was they got to beat the Bengals. This is a must-win.
Yeah.
They lost in overtime, I think, right? Or late in the game.
Yeah, McPherson
fumbled the ball. And long story short, the Bengals go on to the Super Bowl that year. And then the next week, it was they got to beat the Cardinals. The Cardinals are terrible. And they lost to the Cardinals. And
Bills.
Cardinals were like the last team in the league to lose that year. So when I said 6-11, it's more of an overall feeling. It's not going game by game by game. Like last year, they're 7-win team, but they beat San Francisco at home, and San Francisco goes to the Super Bowl. I think a couple weeks later, or maybe the next week, they play Kansas City and probably should have beat them. They lose by 1 score on a game where they turn the ball over on the first snap of the game, and they end up,
So it's not a must-win. Is that what you're saying? It's not a
must-win.
It is. It absolutely is. If they lose this one, they got the Niners, they got the Lions, who I saw in the paper today are going to win the Super Bowl. That's where I saw in the Star Tribune.
Oh, no, they got the Texans after that, week 3, aren't they?
Well, they got the Lions very soon, I think, in the first 5 games. They got the Texans. I got the schedule right in front of me. Where is it here? All right.
I will say that this is a
San Francisco Texans, Packers, Jets, and Lions.
Yeah,
that is the opening after the Giants.
Yeah, when people were figuring out the Jets last year, Aaron Rodgers is gone after 4 plays, so the league just changes week to week to week. But yeah, this is I like this. You're at your healthiest, but you're also like Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones have never played a live snap together. It is the fact that you have Daniel Jones, you got Flores who can make Daniel Jones I think look bad, but you also you're going on the road. You have Sam Darnold playing on the road. I don't think there's probably not a lot of great memories in MetLife Stadium for Sam Darnold, so you're not going to be able to cash in on that.
Well, there's some familiarity.
Yeah, he'll know where the locker room is, I guess, or maybe you won't.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. The way the league is set up now with the 3 preseason games and the starters don't play hardly at all. Many of them don't play at all in the preseason. That makes this first week even more of a wild card, doesn't it? I mean, we don't know what the heck's coming. That's why I don't do that survivor pool that I'm in with, that I used to be in with you. I would be out the first week every flipping.
Wow, you never took advice you took a Browns team that was being billed as a Super Bowl champion. They played the Titans, and I said, Joe, don't do it. Don't take the Browns. I know they're at home, and the Browns lost 33-19 or something, 33-6 or something like that.
Yeah, whatever. Thanks for bringing that up.
But yes, it feels like it's even more and more. Not only is the preseason meaningless for the starters, now the preseason's kind of meaningless. Like Jaron Hall stepped up, they find something else. It's so. Yeah. I don't know that even coaches can read much into this, other than the fact that they tried their best to put Lewis Cine on the field for every snap for the preseason, hoping that somebody would say, "Hey, his hamstring's good. Let's give a 7th round pick." But ultimately, they didn't want to give him $3 million or whatever it is to go with that. But yes, it is absolutely, and that's why you don't see any big point spreads this week. I think 6 points might be the biggest spread. Really? Wow. I'm shocked that the Vikings are favored by 1.5. I figured the home team would there'd be some hesitation about the game, but the home team would get the 2 points or whatever.
There are some good players on this team. Aaron Jones is a huge pickup for this team. Where on the other side, they lost Saquon Barkley. They have Justin Jefferson back. They should have Jordan Addison back. They have they lost Danielle Hunter on defense, but I think they've improved places around him. Stephon Gilmore is a big pickup. I think the Vikings are going to win this one, as you can tell, because it's a must win.
You mentioned everyone but Sam Darnold.
Well, that's why. That's the reason that they're not favored by more. Right there is the unknown of Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I'm not picking them this week. I be on the road first week, and not having all the pieces together. But in saying that, I could see them. The Giants, they have Dexter Lawrence up front, and they added Brian Burns as an edge rusher to go with Thibodeau. They got a great front, but they were terrible against the run defense last year, which doesn't make sense when you look at Dexter Lawrence. But And one of the reasons I'm writing from Sunday about that interior offensive line is I feel like Dexter Lawrence could be a game record, not only for against the run, but also as a guy who can press the middle, because now you have Burns on the outside, you got Thibodeau, another year of experience. So this game will be good to watch for the fact that they talked about running the ball last year, starting with signing Josh Oliver in free agency 2023, all through last year wanting to run the ball, and they were pathetic running the ball. One of the worst in franchise history at running the ball. They need to run the ball against the Giants, and if they run the ball against the Giants and they win that game, then you can start going, maybe if they stay healthy, you can chip out, your 8-9 wins. And the reason I went 6-11 is I feel like everybody wants to play close to the vest and either go, if you want to be like, if you want to venture a little above what people think, you go 9-8. If you want to go a little below and look objective or whatever, you go 8-9. No one wants to just do the extreme. And I used to always just do 8-8 because 8-8 would just be like, could be good, could be bad. I don't know.
That's just typical of you. I was just going to say that I read a story this morning by this clickbait writer, Mark Craig, who predicted the Lions were going to win the Super Bowl. And then you just proved it. You just said you're going to go down to 6-11 for clickbait. That's what Zimmer was.
I saw that. I saw Suhan went 6-11, and I was going to one up him and go 5-11-1. Something like that, just to have a half a win lower. But
I'm just glad
honestly, and people, what always amazes me is that people get genuinely pissed off at you if you don't say they're going to do, if you don't say they're going to win 10 games or, this team could do it all. It's an opinion. If you don't like mine, form your own. This is what I think. I don't think they're going to be that good.
Well, I don't like
saying that if they go 11-6, and people want to say, I'll be the guy who doubts them when they're holding up the Lombardi Trophy. I'll be the guy they're talking about whenever they say, "Well, everyone doubted us." I once heard the Patriots, a Patriot, it might have been Mike Vrabel, in an interview after winning the Super Bowl, saying no one believed in us. And it's like, are you kidding me? You win the Super Bowl every year. No one believed in you.
No one could believe we could win yet another one. Well, yeah. I don't want to believe this one because I'm one of those partisan Vikings observers that doesn't want anybody else who hasn't won a Super Bowl to get one before the Vikings, especially one from our own division. So I don't know. There's some people talk about the Lions maybe falling off a little bit this year. I'm not sure I see it. I think there might be a little regression because the Bears are better. The Packers are going to be good. The Vikings are going to be better than Mark Craig thinks. And, it's you got the 49ers and Eagles are good. And you got Atlanta with Kirk Cousins. So look out, Lions. It's going to be tough to get back to the.
I have Atlanta going to the and you got to have some fun with this stuff because we have no idea what's going to happen. So you got to have a little bit of fun with it. I have Atlanta getting the 4th seed, Dallas getting the 5th seed, and the Zimmers beating the Cousins in the.
Ooh, wouldn't he like that?
Oh, I was also talking to Harrison Smith. We were joking about I forget it's week 6 or whatever it is, where the Cowboys go to Atlanta, and he's like, and Harrison was like, you know what? He goes, I don't. Sometimes I don't watch a lot of games, but he goes, I'm gonna watch that. It'll be fun to watch. I don't think there'll be a handshake. There won't be a handshake ahead.
Good thing Kellen Mond is not a quarterback somewhere. That is playing the Cowboys. So. Well, on that note, we're about on the precipice of the next season. Enjoy it. It should be fun to watch. There'll be plenty to talk about as always. And Mark, thanks for talking about the Zim story. It was great and worth the read for anybody. Pick up the Star Tribune, even subscribe for it. Mark's been shilling for him this whole show here, as he's wont to do. But so thank you. What's that?
Until I retire, then I won't show
You
up.
retire. There you go. Thanks, Mike Wolden, for producing it. Thanks, Joe Johnson, for putting here another season start. And Joe, I wish you were here. It's not the same without you. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. And come on back next week when we talk about how everybody responded to what Mark had to say about Zimmer. And this, no, I'm just kidding. We'll be talking about the Vikings next week. So come on back and we'll do it then. Until then, folks, Skol.
Skol.